30 to 8:30 tonight where we're praying for our nation. And of course, we probably never had a time when our nation needed prayer more than right now. So I called tonight, You Decide Part 2, because I'm viewing it as a continuation of last Saturday night. We never really got to finish that. We had quite a few questions that I hope that I will get to tonight. Matter of fact, in about 10 minutes, I'm going to devote myself to questions. But first, I thought we looked last time at a bunch of scriptures. I can give those to you basically quickly. 1 Corinthians 2:2, John 3:16, John 3:6, John 3:3, John 1:11 to 13, 2 Corinthians 5:17, Romans 12:1 and 2, Colossians 1:9 through 11 and 13 through 14, Galatians 5:16 to 24 and 25 and 26, and then we finished with Deuteronomy 30:19. So I'd like to take another look at Deuteronomy 30, and we'll expand it by a few verses, and then we'll try to get a couple of points across about the day and the hour and what's kind of an update on what we're doing. I think really we got to just kind of wake up and realize we are facing so many distractions. I mean, there are so many voices right now saying things, and most of it is just to distract you from the real issue, particularly anything that is critical and hateful. And all of that is meant to distract you. So I told you last time, there are 4 things that you ought to really be doing. One of them is stabilize yourself. In other words, if Jesus Christ hasn't got enough a grip on you yet, that you are not your own, you realize you've been bought with a price, and I'm going to glorify God with my mortal body, then you got to deal with yourself. So and it's simple. You can't change yourself, but you have to take whatever you're struggling with in your thought life, in your practical life. Listen, anger is an emotion. It needs Jesus Christ to give you self-control to beat it. Amen. So whatever those things are, you've got to stabilize yourself. We have to. We've got to get ourselves under control. The Bible says, like a city broken into and without walls, a man or a woman who has no control over their own spirit. So if you can't even control your thought life or your emotions, how are you going to do the other things? Number 2, I said you need to know God's plan. God's plan is pretty simple. I'll talk about it in just a minute in Deuteronomy 30. And of course, there's so many places. A lot of the scriptures that I just gave you, if you look at those, they were designed to show you what God's plan was, to remind you of what you used to be and what you should be now. And number 3, you ought to share God's plan with a friend. I mean, come on, if you call him a friend, sometimes we have friends, and those are Christians. That's the way it ought to be. And so we don't talk to them about that. But somebody that is a Christian loves being asked again, hey, I don't think I ever heard, when did you get born again? Mm-hmm. What's God done for you lately? That's good news to a Christian. But if that's a religious person, they might not know how to answer that. That's why you need to know God's plan so you can give it to them, and in a way that they'll understand and that'll be clear. And so you share that with a friend. Then I said you got to reach out even to non-conservatives. Unfortunately, too many people have friends that are not conservative, do not love God, are far from God, and it's okay with you. That is wrong. You're a Christian. Your purpose for being here on the earth is to be at least an example and love people enough that you're willing to tell them when they're wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying, You know, listen, I love everybody. I'm talking about what you could say. I love everybody. But homosexuality is wrong. Lesbianism is wrong. And I'm saying that because it's hurting the individual and it's hurting other people and it's robbing them of a future. Part of what God has for people is to have a future where they can be shame-free, regret-free, as well as debt-free, and all the rest of that. So that's impossible when you're in disobedience to what God said. So we love those kinds of people, but we gotta let people know that isn't right, though. I'm not telling you what to do. I don't have to condemn you. I don't have to condemn your lifestyle. I'm just saying it's just not right. And it's as simple as that, according to what God said and what I believe in my heart. I mean, you ought to be able to say that.
Yes.
So if you would reach out, and then especially this year, tell people, we got to start, guys. We've got like a little over 100 days left. You know, we've got to start getting serious about this and let people know that this election is about a lot more than Donald Trump or Joe Biden or a choice like that. The choice is, do you want to have the whole country like New York was, like Chicago was, like Minneapolis was, like Portland was, like Atlanta was, etc., etc., etc. I mean, thank God, most of our country doesn't even know what you're talking about. They see those fires and they saw that destruction and they saw that anger and they saw that hatred, and none of that was in their community. I drove today myself, I drove almost to the Iowa border, and I guarantee you every place that I was driving through out there for 100 and some miles was peace. People didn't, matter of fact, we talked to people out there that are in the medical community, and they said this whole COVID-19, they said there really is a virus. But they said it's not what they say it is. And they said the numbers are so skewed. They said they're outright lying about the number of deaths and outright lying about the number of illnesses from this. And she said, you know, this was a nurse. And she said, I see it every day and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I think we've got to realize that if you live in Chicago, if you live in one of those cities, I feel bad for you. You could think the whole world was like that. It's not like that. Praise God. God is bigger than that. Yeah. And but we've got to start telling people, listen, unless you want that, you have no choice. You're going to have to vote a moral vote in November. Now, one party has voted God out. We don't want God. 3 times they voted him out. They did it on TV. And now they're living it out. Because you do not hear anything from them about God. They're the ones that want to shut the churches down, want to close everything down, want to shut down the economy. You know, they want to just control and manipulate. It's terrible. I haven't heard anyone on the Democratic side yet come out that's still a Democrat. I've heard former Democrats come out strong against this stuff. But I hear none of them talking about all the killings that are taking place and all the rioting. Matter of fact, they just said it again, where the governor in New York said that you cannot have a gathering. There cannot be a parade. There can be no large outside groups except Black Lives Matter, which is a Marxist organization for the violent overthrow of our country that did the rioting. I'm not talking about peaceful protests. I'm talking about the rioters. And they're encouraging it. What else do you call it when they call back the police and say, do not do anything? And if you do arrest anybody, we'll let them out. We will refuse to hold them. And we've got liberal judges who will refuse to convict them. I mean, they arrested over 1,000 people in New York City. And you know how many got convicted? None. None. Wow. So, let's be a little sharper than that in the future, shall we? In Deuteronomy 30 it says this, see, I have set before you today life and prosperity and death and adversity. Wow, does that... I know that was written a long time ago. But if that doesn't sound like the kind of choice we're facing this year, I don't know anything that does. I mean, you can't get it any clearer than that. That's verse 1. And then he said this, in that I command you today. Now this is hard. Boy, this is hard. No, I'm serious. The Democrats can't do it. I was just talking to a preacher friend of mine out of New York, and man, he was saying the people out there are scared to death. He said it's just terrible. He finally opened up his church, and he's not in the city. He's north of the city. And he said he opened up his church and he couldn't get a quarter of his people to come out. They're afraid. They've been barked at by the governor and by the mayors, all the liberals out there, and they're afraid. Well, if you watch that news meeting, you better not. You know, you ought to know what is true and what is evil. You should be able to figure that out. Rioting is not good, right? Peaceful protest, that's standing there, wave your flag, shout your shout, disagree all you want to, but don't hurt anybody. Don't abuse anybody. Listen, forget about police violence. I just saw a statistic that said in the last year there were 6 shootings in New York City, outside of the hundreds that were civilian, shooting at civilians, which was mostly either black on black or white on white. Because the truth is that most people kill people they know. So it's not a racial deal. There is no systemic racism anywhere. We have systemic problems, but we don't have systemic racism. And I hope I get to that in a minute. Otherwise, who knows, this could carry over till next Saturday night. And we could be doing You Decide 3. But anyway, in that I command you today to love the Lord your God. That's pretty good advice. See, I'm so old. I grew up when everybody said that they loved God. Now, a lot of them didn't. I knew that back then. But they did say they did. I mean, everybody loved God. I mean, and there was one way you knew that. Do you know that I'm so old, I remember when criminals knew, when criminals weren't politicians, I remember when criminals were criminals, and they all knew that what they were doing was wrong. Yeah, that's why they sneak around about it and try to bribe people and try to pay things off so they don't have to suffer the consequences. We've always had corruption. There's a big difference between that. You know, it's sort of like having one bad police officer on a force of 100. I have an idea. Why don't we get rid of him? And if he needs to be sent to jail, send him to jail. And then keep the 99 and say, thank you so much for serving. See, every time I've ever, encountered a police officer, every once in a while they stop me just because I'm friendly looking. And I don't get tickets or anything. because when they come up, I know their name. See, it helps if you really know their name. If you personally, so when they come up to the window, you know, if it's a guy, I say, "Hello, sir. How are you? I hope I wasn't going too fast," because that's the only thing I ever did. And he'd laugh and I'd laugh. And if it was a woman, I'd say, "Hello, ma'am. Hope you're having a good day. Hope I didn't ruin it." And they laugh because you're respecting their authority. You're respecting them as a person. And I'm not going to, they know right now, you can relax. I'm not going to do anything crazy. They can tell. I mean, you can look at me, I'm a nice guy. So, I mean, it's unbelievable that loving God should even be an issue. Yet alone, there's still people that call themselves Christians that vote for people that are in a party that threw God out. Mm-hmm. It's like people kicked God out of the schools, got prayer out, got the Pledge of Allegiance out, got under one God out, are proud of themselves for doing all of that. And then there's a school shooting, lo and behold, which there never was. And they say, "Well, where's God?" And we say, "Well, he's right where you put him. He's on the outside. He's with the rest of us, horrified at what's going on, watching what you're doing to your own people that you're supposed to be taking care of." I mean, they kicked the police out of the schools in New York. Wow, that's going to work because there's no violence in schools. In that I command you today to love your Lord your God, to walk in his ways and keep his commandments and his statutes and his ordinances. Wow, these must be some heavy-duty commandments. Oh yeah. Well, they are if you want to be Lord. They are if money's Lord. You know, because it's interesting if you know that there's a list. There's 10 of them. Some of you are remembering. Isn't "thou shalt not kill" on? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Oh, you know that. So nobody should kill. Right. Shouldn't steal. Shouldn't cheat. Shouldn't lie. But what about the first 4? Love the Lord your God and him only. Mm-hmm. See, a lot of people say they love God, but they've got a bunch of gods. They don't. They have a lot of gods in their life. Overtime is God. You know, the person they're with is God. Vacation's God. You know that this year you can hardly go on vacation? Imagine the fun it would be to go to Walt Disney World in 100-degree heat and wear a mask. Wow. That you may live and multiply, and that the Lord your God may bless you in the land where you are entering to possess it. Wow. So all this commandment stuff is all about so that you can have a happy life and that you can be blessed by God supernaturally all your life and everything you put your hand to. Yeah, that's... See, you are getting it. You can get this. It's not so deep you can't get it. But if your heart turns away, in other words, your emotions or your feelings, if something grabs your attention and diverts it and distracts you, and you turn away and you will not obey because you turned away. When you turned away to look, you might listen to some, if you weren't there when the riots were there and didn't smell the smoke and didn't suffer the loss and weren't killed, you might look at that on TV and go, that's horrible. But then somebody comes on and says, well, they're angry. And you start going, yeah, that's right, they're angry. Because there's systemic racism. Yeah, that's right, there's systemic racism. There's not. Where? Where? It's interesting. In all of those cities where those riots are taking place, those are all Democratic mayors, mostly Democratic governors, I think every one of them actually. And, it's unbelievable that all of them were told their police departments to back off. That's not even constitutional. The police are there to protect you and I. They're not the bad guys. They're the good guys. I declare to you today, if you do that, if you are drawn away, if you're distracted away, if you get seduced away and worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you will surely perish. And again, that word perish, it's like God said to Adam and Eve, in the day that you eat of this fruit, in the day you eat of it, you will die. The day you eat of it, you will die. So imagine Eve's relief when she bit that, chewed it, swallowed it, and didn't fall down. So then she went and she told Adam, she said, Adam, we won't die. See, it's not as bad as you think.
Ooh.
Come on, just try it for me. That's seduction. And he did. And we've been paying a price ever since then. And they thought they didn't die. Oh, wait a minute. But they did die. Do you know that it was the same day? That day, God came. And he said, for their benefit, he knew. Come on. Right? He's God.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, where are you? We're here, Lord. What are you doing there, Adam? Well, we're hiding. Who are you hiding from? We're hiding from you. All these days we met every day, and you never hid from me before? And you were never ashamed of me before? Because you never chose something over me before? But now you did, Adam? What did you do? Now again, God knew. But see, he needs you to know that you did it. Well, we're naked. Who told you we were naked? Well, we just know we're naked. In other words, you've been exposed. See, sin, you feel, once you sin, you feel like you can't get rid of it. Everybody's got to see it. But they couldn't. Nothing changed in them, on the outside of them, but they died that day because they got separated from God. God said, I told you not to. I'll leave. And you and I are done. See, that's what death is. Death is being separated from God, being separated from life that's in God. Real life is in God. It's not in what you do, it's not in what you say. Life is in God. So we gotta never forget that. And apparently we will do You Decide Part 3 on Saturday. God bless you. Have a great night.